We're your hosts,
Aaron Bacus
and Jason Kindler.
We like to sit down with our guests to hear their journey, their challenges, and how they impact the local community.
So grab a seat, tune in, and let's get inspired by Jacksonville's everyday workforce.
Welcome to Hometown Jacks. All right, Daniel, good to meet you. Aaron Bacus, Daniel Bean, CEO of K9 for Warriors. And man, I am so excited. You probably were like, who is this weird guy texting me out of the blue? Then I had to name drop a little bit, and then fortunate to get you in here really quick. Well, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for what you do for the community. Shira Kavanaugh was very complimentary of you. And, appreciate what you do.
Well, she says nice things about everybody,
yes,
so I don't know if that really qualifies me.
That's true.
I'm so excited about this because I know our audience loves dogs. We love veterans. What a combination. I want to talk a little bit about your history first and kind of what you did in the military, and then really get into the meat of the K9 for Warriors and all the great stuff they're doing. So Vanderbilt undergrad and University of San Diego Law School, that sounds very impressive.
Well, I was very lucky, very lucky to get into Vanderbilt, and had a Navy ROTC scholarship. So I knew I knew I had a job, so I didn't have to study too much, and had a great time at Vanderbilt, and recommend everyone go to Vanderbilt. And we are a football school now that we beat Alabama.
You are a football school. There's no doubt about that. You're on the map now. Did you have military in your family, or what drove you in the ROTC?
My dad was in the Coast Guard for a little while, and then my sister got a ROTC scholarship to Virginia. And I couldn't let my sister get a full ride without me doing that. So I got into West Point, and my dad was very upset that I wasn't going to go to West Point. So he said, "You've got to get a scholarship, otherwise I'm not going to pay for you."
Yes.
And so I was lucky to get a ROTC scholarship, and Vanderbilt was gracious enough to take me. I don't think they knew what they were getting. So I was very lucky. I think I tell my kids I was on academic probation 6 out of the 8 semesters. First semester they didn't know who I was. Last semester I was like, just get the hell out of here.
Well, you couldn't make it every semester being on scholarship.
I know.
So when you say ROTC, you mean ROTC,
right?
Which is still very prevalent today, and all in the high schools, developing people for the military.
ROTC is a great program, and it's sort of a counter to the academy, where I have a stepdaughter that went to the Air Force Academy. She's a captain in the Space Force, and at the academy, if that's the type of format for you, it is 24/7, and everything's taken care of. My father, I lost my mother when I was 3, and my father had 6, so he would send us off to, as soon as my brother went off to college at Virginia, I was on the bus every weekend to Charlottesville. At the fraternity house, learning how to tap kegs. And they don't have kegs at West Point. So, but Vanderbilt did, and so I was very happy to go there. And I think the ROTC training is much better than the academy training.
Yes. So
I served on 2 warships.
So Navy. What made you decide Navy?
President Kennedy is an idol of mine. And he was a naval officer, and
there you go.
And I didn't want to sleep on the sand in a tent.
Right. You needed a little bit more combinations. I get that. So Navy captain for 25 years. So tell us a little bit about where you went, that you were saying a kind of ships. Super interested about that.
Well, I spent 4 years on 2 ships. 90% of the time underway. I think I had 3 commanding officers that weren't very happy in their marriages. So we were underway all the time, and that's one of the ways.
What kind of ships?
2 frigates. And it's one of the ways you get promoted to admiral. So we went to the Mediterranean. Out of Mayport, we went to the Mediterranean, Nova Scotia, and the Caribbean, and then West Coast. My dad told me I needed to see that side of the country. I told him he was wrong, but it turns out he was right. And so San Diego for 2 years, went to Panama Canal, Russia, and then off to the Persian Gulf.
Oh, wow. What kind of duties does a frigate do? What is a frigate?
A frigate is just like a carrier escort ship, and we call it a missile sponge. So you want to protect the carrier as much as you can, and that's your job. And we're a little more nimble than the carrier, and we can go off a little bit quicker. The carrier's got about 105 aircraft, and that's really the mothership, and you need to do everything you can to protect it. But the Persian Gulf tour was just us and another destroyer, and we were just out there. And it really is an indication of how bad our intelligence was, because we were there right before Saddam invaded Kuwait, and we were told the whole time that Iraq was our friend. So that was indicative of how bad our intel was for that. Fortunately, we left right before he did that, and so we didn't have to go back. And then I spent a year as an instructor at the Surface Warfare Officer School, where you're teaching junior officers. And then I got selected for the law education program. So each branch of the military takes out 4 or 5 warfare officers a year, and they put them into law school so that, like, for example, if a commanding officer of a warship were to then have a collision or do something wrong and getting court-martialed, he can have an officer like myself who's actually been at sea, warfare qualified, to defend him or her. It really works well.
When you were on these ships, were you in charge of the whole ship? Or
No. So my first ship, I was a communications officer. So each ship is broken into departments, and then you have divisions. And so it's really a tiny little city. You have your engineering department, your operations, your weapons, and stuff like that. And you spend 8 hours a day on watch. And that's really your main function as an officer, is you're learning how to drive the warship, or you're learning how to run the engineering plant. And then we want you to know how to do everything on the warship, how to fire the weapons and all those good stuff. So I was a communications officer on the first ship, and then I got to be the navigator on the second one out of San Diego, and that was a lot of fun. So,
I imagine the navigator, that's a pretty important job.
Yeah, I remind my wife all the time, I can navigate to the Persian Gulf, so don't give me directions about turning right or left.
You've done it, for sure.
So you sit there.
So where did the law, you mentioned that, where did that come in?
So I drove too many warships into too many piers, and the Navy figured out it would be cheaper to send me to law school rather than pay for a new sonar dome. But no, I knew I didn't want to have command at sea, and then I'd been an editor of the school paper at Vanderbilt, and emphasis on sports writing. And so I had a mentor at the San Diego Union Tribune, and I asked him, should I go to law school or be a sports writer? And my buddy at the time and close friend is Buster Olney. You will see him on ESPN on Sunday night. He and I were roommates at Vanderbilt.
Oh, neat.
He looked at Buster and he said, you can be the sports writer. You need to go to law school.
Right.
So off I went.
So obviously they picked the right one. So you went in 25 years as a Navy. Then 2002 you went into private practice. I'm assuming you were in the reserves during that time.
Yeah. So 98 I left active duty, and then I worked in private practice until. I'm still in private practice, but I left the reserves in 2012 after 25 years.
Wow.
And actually on Thursday I turned 60, and so then I start to get my retirement pay and my TRICARE.
Okay. Wow,
if the Navy's tracked it correctly, we'll see how that goes. But
well, we appreciate your service. That's pretty amazing. So let's jump into the K9s. I mean, what a great history. Obviously makes you very uniquely qualified to run the K9 for Warriors. What sparked, when was your initial, hey, I'd like to get involved, or I got involved?
Sherry saw me, and I have been involved in a lot of different veterans activities. I think it's important that I'm a trial lawyer. I have a lot of access, and I can solve a lot of people's problems without going to law school, right, or going into the courthouse. And so I felt an obligation to do that. And so I met Sherry, and Sherry knew that I could help her from a legal perspective. Sherry, I love to tell people that Sherry started K9s for Warriors at the age of 65. And so
Sherry Duvall, who was the founder.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. Sorry. Okay. And so, and her son came back from Iraq, and he had post-traumatic stress disorder. She didn't know it, but she knew that the only thing that Brett was normal around was the dog. And so with that was her impetus to provide more dogs to more warriors with post-traumatic stress disorder.
It was so interesting because I read that on the website. I wasn't aware of that. Obviously, he's the brother of David Duvall, right?
No, it was stepbrother.
Stepbrother. Okay, because you always wonder how David's involved in that. So
yeah, David was on our board, and his father is Bob.
Okay.
They're the only two father-son to ever win a golf tournament on the same day.
I remember that.
And Bob is a tremendous golfer, and David obviously was number one in the world. But they were on the board that Sherry started. Wounded Warrior Project started K9s for Warriors with an $80,000 gift. Admiral Delaney was on the Wounded Warrior Project board, was on the K9s board, and was able to get that seed money for Sherry.
Wow. So Wounded Warriors started out K9 for Warriors.
No, Wounded Warrior Project donated the money
to get started. So I know you were mentioning Brett, Sherry's son, a little bit, and sorry, I know you were talking about that, but tell me how the light bulb came on for Sherry on how she figured out, because I read on the website she was going to all these doctors to help her son, and at some point she realized they can't do anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we don't know about PTSD more than we know, right? So there's a lot to be learned, and we're punching through that every day. We're getting closer and closer. I mean, one of the things that we're trying to get to the point now where we're going to brain scan the brains of our warriors before they get to us, and then we'll scan them 6 to 12 months after they leave us and see what effect on the brain the dog is having. what is the activation point? I've often thought about the fact that, warrior comes back, typically has a spouse, typically has dependents. They certainly have a family, right? And so none of that works for them.
Interesting.
And so why is it a dog, right? And so, what we say is it's the unconditional love of the dog. We say that the dog isn't judgmental. There's no communication, verbal communication, no questioning. For a lot of the dependents, it's an incredibly difficult task to have your loved one come home and then not want to do anything with you, want to draw away from you, be very introverted. And after a while, I can very much understand and sympathize that I just can't do anything with this person, and you've given up on them, and I understand all that. I mean, I've worked very closely with 9 warriors, not all of whom have service dogs, but I've been their big brother, been taking them to appointments, gone to the VA, saved them from killing themselves, slept on their couch.
Wow.
And each of them is slightly different, but they can be physical. We have a warrior that has restraining orders against them, and aggressive. And it's just, it's a terrible, as one of our warriors will describe PTSD, it's evil. And you don't know, and we're very lucky that it's the dog, the unconditional love of the dog, that actually can break through so many times, right?
Well, tell me exactly what is PTSD. I mean, you hear that terminology all the time, and I think I know. Could you explain?
Well, if you do know, you can tell me. But as I understand post-traumatic stress disorder, it's basically a rise in your anxiety levels, which causes you to act unreasonably and abnormally from what you want to be. It's also probably a cause of depression. So many other things that post-traumatic stress disorder either emphasizes or exacerbates in the human that already exists. So most of them, I mean, when I look back and I compare them all, none are identical to each other. They all have different mannerisms and things of that nature. A couple of things that are commonality to it is the reclusiveness, the withdrawing from society, failure to integrate.
In my mind, it's kind of like I'm in a war zone and now I'm not. Like I'm heightened over here with all of the stresses and the fears here, and then I try to assimilate back into normal life. Is that?
That's some of it, but for our females that we see, so the 1,100 pairings that we've done in 14 years at K9s.
1,100 dogs you've put.
And
that's
warriors.
amazing.
We've saved over 2,000 dogs. But of the 1,100, 25% are female.
Interesting.
90% were raped on active duty by fellow members. Okay, so their post-traumatic stress disorder is not an IED. It's not gunfire. It's not a Humvee that blows up. It's the trauma of being raped. And so, a couple of different things there. One is what I'm really want to do is understand PTSD so that we can extrapolate it over to various other industries. I think for the sexual assault, female, and some males are, but it's by a vast majority is female. We were just at a conference 2 weeks ago in Wisconsin. Their sole focus is women on active duty that were raped, right? Survivors of that. We brought 2 of our warriors, our female warriors, in, and they were fantastic with their service dogs. We signed up 4 women at that conference. But I'm interested to see if a female's PTSD is slightly different than a male's PTSD. I really want that brain scan, and I want to be able to compare brain scans among a variety of warriors, break up female, break up male, and really begin to better understand exactly what it is that's going on in the brain, and then seeing how the service dog, more than any other drug and more than any other aid, it's the service dog that works. And so working to proliferate the spread of service dogs really... When I go through the airport, every time I go through the airport, I see more and more service dogs. That makes me very happy because I'm seeing people that are being helped by the service dog. And not just warriors, but folks, first responders, number one killer, first responder, suicide. We do, for our dogs that don't make it in our program, so 1 out of every 2, we call those dogs, we put into various police or fire, FBI, Border Patrol. We try to get those dogs out, and we do that all around the country. The rest we adopt out. But the first responders very much need the service dogs and the sexual assault victims as well. Wow. And the sexual assault victims, it really adds to second component, which is the physical safety. Not only is the dog working to keep your anxiety levels low, right? And I think they can pick it up in your breath. They can pick it up in your mannerisms. A lot of times, when I've represented a couple warriors in depositions or a courtroom, the dog will activate before I ever notice it, sometimes before the warrior notices it.
It's really incredible to the special gift dogs are to the human race. I want to go back to Brett a little bit, though, with Sherry's son. Like, did you know Sherry and Brett all during this time? And did you see oh my gosh, the dog is doing this and helping him?
No, I did not. I was working with Sherry to secure the legal aspects of the land, the construction contracts, the employment contracts. I helped her hire, Rory Diamond as the CEO for 8 years. And then I started on the board in approximately 2014. I never really I've known Brett a long time. Right. I knew that Brett was more stabilized when I started really working more with K9s, in that he always had his service dog. We have 10 employees at K9s that have a service dog. Wow. In addition to obviously the warriors and stuff like that. But I can see the impact of the service dog. So when you come in on a Sunday, you're going to get your dog on a Tuesday. And so I talk to them warriors on Monday, right? And I tell them, very proud of them for coming out of their shell, being here. But I also tell them that you're taking a spot, okay? And I know you're uncomfortable, but I need you really to fight through it and do the best you can. Because if you don't sync with your dog, we have another service dog waiting for you in the kennel. I don't have someone down the street for you, right? So you lose a spot, we lose a spot, and there's somebody that's going to be set back. And so, but the transformation of the vast majority of those folks, when I talk to them on Monday, they do not make eye contact with me. Their head is down. They don't communicate very well. They don't want to be there. You can tell they're in a group now with 8 other people, and they're not comfortable, right? They're out in society. And at the end of it, they're talking to each other. They're, high-fiving each other, 19 days later. The best example is one gentleman I remember distinctly when the day before he graduated, he was in the parking lot dancing with his dog. Wow. Okay. Now he would never ever have done that, the first day. Last Friday, as I told our crowd at the gala, Friday of the first week is the first time that they come out in front of a crowd. We have all of our employees gathered in the front porch, and they come out and they present themselves and the dog. Right. And then we take them to public access training for the very first time that they're with us. For a couple of those warriors, female warriors, in fact, they hadn't been out to a mall in a decade.
Wow.
But they felt that they could do it with the dog.
Well, you mentioned, too, about your gala that you had last week was incredibly successful. Second highest in the... I'm
told it's the second highest revenue-generating gala in North Florida history.
Wow, that's awesome.
Thank you.
That's great. I want to talk about your location. So 2 locations in Ponte Vedra. That was your originating location right outside of Nocatee, right? That's where it first started. That one's grown. I've seen the progress. And then you have one kind of underneath the freeway there.
Right over the flyway. Yeah, flyover, excuse me. So we started, and I remember when the main building on the main campus was 2x4s. And so that's our clubhouse for all of our warriors. That's their gathering point now. We also have our warrior trainers isolated in there, and we have our warrior ops teams. Most people don't realize that when you apply and are accepted, that's when we start to watch you. That's when we start to talk to you, and we start to study you. We start to study your family. We talk to your provider. We want to know what your triggers are. We want to know what the family really wished that you could do that you're not doing now. For the vast majority of the time, I want, my mom or my dad to go to soccer matches. I want them to go to the beach. They're not doing any of that.
Right.
And so we try to pair them. So if it's the beach or a water activity, we try to give them a dog that loves the water, that wants to go to the water, and the warrior feels as though, well, I've got to do what I got to do.
I was stalking you on Facebook today, and I saw you set a video of dog playtime.
I love that one.
Is that at your place where they have a big pool?
No.
I thought that was hilarious.
We have a pool and we have a fire hydrant in the pool, but it's outside. But no, that one that you're talking about,
There's
love that
nothing funnier than a scene of a bunch of dogs sitting together and looking at each other. You just wonder what's going through their mind.
Yeah, they're communicating. The dog
for sure
is very intelligent.
But
we're
what's
just beginning to
interesting
tap
though is that you said, well, on the website it said majority of rescue.
That's
so
true.
am I getting this right? It's not a particular like dogs in general are intelligent.
Right. Yeah, I mean they very intuitive, right? And so they're a lot smarter than we ever think they are.
Right.
And my dogs all manipulate me really well. I have my wife says they train me very well.
And you have several.
We've adopted 4.
Okay.
We have 3
So
at the
do you
house.
have an adoption problem? Do you keep
Yes,
wanting
I
to
do.
adopt more?
Yeah.
I would imagine.
My wife, when we have adoption events, I always like to go out to show support to my team that's working on the weekend, and my wife makes me take the motorcycle,
Yes.
so I can't.
So you can't bring
the
one
dog.
back.
Yeah.
Well, we have another location in Pet Love Canine Center in San Antonio,
Petco
Texas.
Love, yeah.
Okay, Petco. So that's a sponsor. That's really great.
Yep.
And then Warrior Ranch in
In San
Helotes,
Antonio.
Texas.
Helotes, which is right
Okay.
next to San Antonio. So what we do is like right now we have a class of 10 in Jacksonville, in Nocatee, and then we have a class of 3 in San Antonio. Helotes is what we call it. And it's a very isolated ranch up in the hills of San Antonio, very peaceful and serene. Now, we can close people off in Nocatee as well. So you're there for 19 days and it's Hotel California. You
Right.
can check out, but you can't leave. And it's so same places. Petco Love facility in San Antonio provides us with an opportunity to take the rescue dogs and train them as well. And then we have the mega kennel, as you mentioned, right on Phillips Highway.
And what do
next
you
to the
mean by
flyover.
mega kennel? Like that's where
It's going to be the world's largest mega kennel. It's going to be the world's largest kennel when it's done. So right now we hold about 90 dogs at the mega kennel.
90 dogs that you've identified as potentials, right?
Right. Both procured and rescue. Then we merge them together. They have their own kennel, obviously. So the best way it was explained to me, and it's very helpful, is the dog comes to us, they go into quarantine for 10 days to make sure they don't have anything that they can spread. Once they get through quarantine, then they go to elementary school. And once they graduate from elementary school, they go to middle school, and then they go to high school. And if they graduate from high school, then we'll take them to college, and college is the finishing, polishing of the dog, and then pairing it with the warrior. Not all the dogs get through. A lot of the dogs have a guarding problem. A lot of dogs will have a medical problem. None of the dogs that we have were euthanized. None of the dogs we have will go back to the kennel. We either put them in the station dog program, and those are really dogs that are, I call them the fraternity sorority dogs. They're very social. They like more than one person. When we bring them up into our office space, they're the ones that go from cubicle to cubicle to cubicle. They have a hard time, and I have one of those dogs, and that dog loves people and could never focus on one person.
Interesting.
Probably
you
has
mentioned
attention
guard
deficit
problem.
disorder.
Did you just say that for the dog?
Yeah,
Like, what
guarding.
does that mean?
That means that when they're eating or when they're playing, they don't play well with others.
Got you.
And so some people have a guarding problem too. So.
Right. Well, yeah, I get that. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of touched a little bit on how a warrior gets a dog because
Mm-hmm.
I went on your website. I kind of flipped through the application a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like that's a 18 to 24 month process of
Mm-hmm.
determining if you get one.
Yeah, if you're accepted.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we can. The time whether or not you're accepted or not is a little bit quicker as soon as you get all your paperwork in. And sometimes the paperwork is a little too demanding for some people, and we try to help them through the process. But it is important that we know as much as we can about you, and that we know as much about the environment in which you think you're going to take a service dog back. Because that service dog is our dog the whole way through. We had an example in Springfield, Massachusetts, the last couple of months. Warrior had to go back into a mental facility. He had been aggressive with his spouse, and so there was a restraining order, and the spouse, the non-warrior spouse, kept the dog, which defeats the purpose, obviously. The warrior needs a service dog. And so, she has a point, the non-warrior spouse has a point about the dog has become attached to the children and myself. And then we're like, well, the warrior needs the service dog too. But one of the points that was really dispositive is that we showed the paperwork that says that actually is the K9s for warrior dog.
Right.
And so we will exercise our rights in court. We'll come get it. And sometimes we do have to go get it. If we feel like the warrior, after they've left us, isn't taking care of the service dog, we're not going to leave the service dog.
So the dog is the K9's dog forever.
Until we retire it, okay? So sometimes...
so it's not with the warrior forever, for
It's
him.
technically with the warrior unless the warrior maltreats the dog, doesn't get recertified. If you're not taking it to the vet, these are things that we put into place to make sure that the service dog is cared for,
Right.
right? And so,
Interesting.
one of the veterans I spoke to you about that I was very close to and that I took care of, we had to take her dog back because she got involved with drugs again. And so that
Wasn't taking care of the
that
dog.
wasn't an environment.
So
right.
if the warrior's doing everything right, they're living it up, it's their dog for life.
Correct.
Okay.
And then ultimately we'll retire the dog with that warrior, and at that point we relinquish any and all rights.
Okay.
But as long as the dog is a service dog. So, Aaron, we talk to them about, and we remind the public that the service dog, when the service dog is working, is a wheelchair for all intents and purposes. It is a cane.
It's interesting you say that. That's one thing I wanted to bring up is that they're a working dog. They are trained to work. And when they're not doing that 8 or 10 hours a day, like it's similar to us as humans, like
Right.
rest time and all of that.
Correct. But we encourage the warrior to work the dog. Obviously, work their training with the dog, their commands every day. When you leave us, you're not done. You have to continue to train the dog because we're going to demand that you recertify. And if you refuse to recertify, then we will be knocking on your door because we're worried about the service dog too. So we're more worried about the human, but slightly less. We're also worried about that service dog.
I get it. I mean, you
Yeah.
put a lot of time into it, and it
Yeah.
really brings up a ton of good points because I think for the layman like me out there, it's like, it's all roses. You train the dog, you give it it doesn't always work out that way. And it's a two-way street for
right.
sure.
Yeah, no, we have issues. We've done 1,100, so yes, there's some issues with some service dogs along the way, or warriors not doing what they're supposed to do. And then, of course, it becomes a circumstantial thing.
Sure.
If the warrior's into it for now 7 years and can't recertify, and the dog is 9 years old, I mean, there's going to be some.
Right.
We're not going to go yank the dog right away because we also know that could have a very negative effect on the warrior. So there's a lot of things that influence the decision. But the first year, we had a talk this week with the first year warrior that's almost done with his first year, couldn't recertify, and we're like, if you don't buckle up, buddy, we're going to come knock on that door.
Recertify, do they need to come back to one of the locations and do that?
Well, they can recertify by Zoom. We'll go and train you if you have a problem. Or if we really feel concerned about the service dog, we will fly you back so that we can physically see the dog and we can physically see
what
if you've
an
been working.
all-encompassing
Yeah.
job this is.
Yeah.
There's so many different aspects that I never even thought of. And I read on the website, too, that you have people that are flagged out all around the country that are looking for the dogs. Like,
Right.
are they going in the kennels and like, wow, that looks like a candidate that's
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah, so we send folks everywhere, North Carolina, Canada, Texas, all around the country. If we get a word that there's, somebody who's been hoarding multiple labs or something like that, labs are favorite dogs, but
Right.
we don't discriminate on that. The only dog we're really a little more concerned about is the pit bull. We've used pit bulls.
You have used pit bulls.
Yeah, we have. But one of the points for the service dog is to help integrate the warrior into society. And pit bull, unfortunately, sometimes has a negative stigma.
Rap. Yeah.
So that sometimes can have an adverse effect. One of our best ambassadors, we always bring him to the halls of Congress in D.C. He makes a great point, and that is, when we go through the halls, Senator. People are coming the other way are looking at me. They're smiling. They're looking at Doc. His name of his dog. They want to pet Doc. They know they can't pet Doc, and they're just in a very good
And by
mood.
the way, Daniel, that's excruciating. Okay, to all of us that like dogs, and you have this big sign on this cute dog here, and you can't pet it.
Yeah. Actually,
Is there anything you can do to change that?
no. But actually, one of my buddies at the gala said that the vest on the dog says "Do not pet." Do not make eye contact. He goes. That reminded me of the rules my wife said on our first date. So I thought that was cute.
Funny.
But David will talk to the politicians and he'll say, I've just been walking through your halls, and everybody's in a good mood. But if I didn't have the dog and I just had a shirt that said I have PTSD, I'm fully disabled, nobody would look at me. Nobody would smile. They do everything they can to ignore me. And so the dog is there to also help to integrate When I take my dogs to work and walk them up and down Bay Street or Laura Street, whatever, and take them to City Hall, everybody smiles. Everybody wants to see the dog.
For lack of a better word, it's an icebreaker. It's like, oh, here's the dog. It's kind of like a baby.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yep.
Now, do you guys ever grab a puppy
Yes.
and start from puppy stage?
Yeah, we do have puppies that we foster. Not as many, but yes, we do that. We don't have our own little farm that we do that. We're considering that. There are some folks, volunteers that want us to do that. Obviously, the puppy is a really nice marketing tool for us as well.
Right.
So we balance it, but the puppy takes a long time for the puppy to be ready.
What keeps coming to my mind, Daniel, since this is such a proven program, at what point does it go mainstream with the VA? Like, or do you not really want it to? Like,
No.
to me, this is a VA medical treatment device.
Right. It's a great issue and a great question. And we're breaking through now. So I think in the past...
After 20 years?
Yeah, well, 14.
Okay.
But the VA is obviously well-intended, and they're doing the best they can. And change is not good for them. And we have not helped it as an organization because we in the past have adopted a very public, critical view of the VA. And so we've switched that now. And so because we realize that they don't know what to do with the service dog. It's foreign to them. And so we've switched to implementation, helping them. Here's how you're going to here's how we recommend you implement the program, service dog program. They have no idea where to put it, right? Do we put it under prosthetics? Do we put it over here? How do we test it? Da, 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 da. And so we've taken a different tact with them. The SAVES Act, the PAWS Act got signed by President Trump, so 5 years ago. The VA worked very hard to dilute the PAWS Act so that the VA only had to put on a service dog class. You had to bring the dog, by the way.
Okay.
We're not going to pay for the service dog. You have to bring your service dog, but we'll help you once a month, and that's
not enough.
That's not enough. But the SAVES Act, which is what we've helped to write, we've lobbied it, it will get enacted this year. It's got full bipartisan support.
Wow.
That is the Service Dogs Assisting Veterans Act. And it's not the SAVE Act because everyone with election integrity will be jumping up and down.
Right,
but
right,
it's
right.
the SAVES Act. And what that does is it requires the VA to spend $10 million a year on service dogs.
Wow.
Yeah.
So obviously that goes to you guys.
I
mean, kind of. You're the only one doing dogs, right?
We're not. There's others that do it, and
Okay.
so one of the other strategy changes we had is we don't compete against anybody. We help everyone we can help. We just happen to do it better than everybody.
Right. Well, there's always a little competitive spirit. Why not?
Right.
Now, you mentioned a little bit that all dogs are smart, and you mentioned labs. So is that, if you had to pick a breed, is that the top of the list?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's
my Irish setter is really dumb, but go ahead.
Okay. So what's a couple breeds after that would be a little bit less, but up there?
I mean, the collie is brilliant. The
Okay.
poodles have been.
Poodle.
I was not a poodle fan, but I am now.
Poodles have a lot of attitude, though, don't they?
They are brilliant. They're brilliant. They're very smart.
All kinds of poodles mix, or doesn't matter? I guess.
Hypoallergenic. It doesn't matter. We do a lot of hypoallergenic, and but regular poodles are brilliant too. What our cutoff is, frankly, is age. We don't want anyone older than 4.
Okay.
We want them 45 pounds or more, but we'll work with exceptions. The reason behind that is you're supposed to be able to help the warrior get up.
Okay.
Now, most of our warriors are all mobile, but they're getting older, and so at some point the dog is going to have to help them get up. And so the Labradors are my personal favorites, but we've taken all kinds. Huskies are good. There's really not a bad dog for that.
Interesting, because I read on your website too that the veteran has to be, or the warrior has to be physically able. Mm-hmm. You see a lot of warriors with a prosthetic leg and they can get around normally, but this isn't necessarily for the one that is not able to get around on their own.
Right. We need you to be able to exercise the dog. I think we say at least a mile a day. Maybe it's 2 miles a day. In total. We need you to exercise the dog. Right. We need you to be, and frankly, we think that for them to regain their quality of life, they have to get back into society, and integrating them back into society, integrating them first into their family. I mean, I can't tell you how many spouses come up to us and say, "Thank you for giving my wife back," or "Thank you for giving my husband back. Thank you for giving my dad back." That's just invaluable because they're getting back into integrating into the family.
All via the dog, which is just unbelievable. Now, you mentioned a little bit about the progression of the dog going from kindergarten on up. So it takes about 6 to 8 months?
Yes. Anywhere from, some of the dogs we get that we buy are so well trained from our producers. And we've been working with them for years. We can go 3 or 4 months because one of the things we're looking at is whether if we have a dog that's ready to go, tested, we're not going to just throw them in a kennel just to say we're going to wait for 6 months.
Right.
We're not doing that.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking too, is if you get access to more funds, you can hire people to train them, so it's faster and you have more veterans you can help.
If we had more money, we would be buying more dogs. And and what we will do is we're already looking at this summer, we're going to go to an alternate location in El Paso. We have been working with other nonprofits, and we have an opportunity to run a class in El Paso. We're in San Antonio. We'll run a class in El Paso. I think we're going to run a class in Reno. We might run a class in Alabama, in addition to what we already do. And so we'll
kind of like satellite locations of the
right, but we don't have to have brick and mortar there. We'll just bring everyone in and bring our trainers. We have a warrior trainer. We have a dog trainer. We have to bring our warriors in, and then we bring any support staff that's necessary for 3 weeks. We believe that 18, 19 days is critical to establishing a habit. It's also breaking them away from a lot of different service dog entities. They do it differently. Some let you go home at night. We don't do that because we want you to
So
be
the
totally integrated.
warrior comes and stays at your location for 3 weeks, learns how to integrate with the dog.
Yep.
And I noticed that you do not let anybody come with the warrior.
No.
It's the warrior, no spouse, no helpers, no nothing.
Right.
Interesting.
Yep.
I thought it was kind of cool, like the training cues you had listed on your website, like stand, look, lap, front, under, like walk through those real quick. I mean, they look kind of obvious, but maybe not.
Well, it's the dog. My favorite is lap, and the dog will do that if they feel that your anxiety levels are going through the roof. I mean, so 2 weeks ago in Wisconsin, Warrior Mindy was telling her horrific story. She has Tioga. Mindy starts to cry. Tioga is already in her lap. She's in front of a crowd of 100 people.
Literally puts
Both paws on her lap to calm her down. The dog is, put the pressure on the human individual, reassure them. It's like putting a blanket on you. And so that to me is my favorite command. Also, the dog sometimes will intuitively, if they don't trust the person, they will come between. So if I had a service dog right now, if my service dog didn't trust you, Aaron, my service dog would be right here.
Does that happen a lot, you see?
Not a lot, but the dog will do it if they don't trust you.
Just out of the blue. And you're like, whoa.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a service dog. Dogs know if you're a dog lover or not. Or dogs, I've never really warmed up to a person that my dogs don't like.
Interesting. That is so interesting.
It is.
Well, I mean, you cannot be a dog lover and still appreciate what's going on with dogs.
I'm not trying to discriminate.
Okay. My wife doesn't like dogs. I've been trying for a long time, Daniel. You're not helping my cause.
My first wife didn't want a dog, and then I brought one home saying, honey, I've had a dog all my life. I haven't had a dog while I was on the ships. And I understand you don't want a dog. And then Commodore ate her bathing suit the first day, and that was not good.
That was not it. That's not
But
good.
after that, Commodore became my ex-wife's favorite friend.
Oh, good.
So my ex-wife now has 2 dogs, by the way. So
Okay. Is there
it can happen.
Yes,
bring
it
a dog
can.
home,
Miracles
Aaron.
can happen. I agree.
Bring a dog home.
Is there a period where the demand for dogs is higher? Like a time in the year, naturally, I would think after something going on and where warriors are deployed, or
I thought that we would exhaust the supply, but my procurement people tell me that it's unlimited. We can go out and they will breed to the demand.
Interesting.
And so if we say, we plan on 150 every year, but if our road shows go well, right? If we can do well in El Paso and it turns out to be less than or right on what we budgeted, and same thing in Reno or Alabama, wherever we might go, then we'll plan on 200 dogs. We'll plan on 250, and we'll ask our breeders to breed to that. And then we'll just see what we get in the rescue department, right?
So it's just interesting to me. You guys have the blueprint. It's just about really expanding and multiplying. I mean, it's what's so cool about what you're doing. I just thought of something. Who names the dogs? How does that happen?
Sponsors name the
do.
dogs. Yep. So we try to get sponsors for every dog.
Explain that. So anybody can give money, and that's my sponsored dog.
Mm-hmm. And the corporations can do it, and then sometimes the corporation will allow us to do it. So Carnival Cruise sponsored a dog. They named it Jax.
Okay.
And they, the TPC always names a dog after the last year's winner.
Okay.
And so Scotty Scheffler won twice, so we're looking forward to what the TPC and the PGA is going to name the second dog, because we already have one Scotty.
We already have one Scotty.
So
How much does it cost to sponsor a dog?
Individually, our price is $30,000. Corporate, we go for $40,000.
Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. And that's kind of what it costs, right? I was reading about that.
Yes. When I talk to people, they're like, "What does it cost to do this?" And I'm like, "Well, so can I include my maintenance guy that makes our campus look great to motivate people to come to work? We don't allow, trash or anything. When you come through, we're pretty spotless, right?
Right.
And so, can I count the maintenance guy? How about me, right? Do I get counted? And I'm not training the dog, or I'm not training the warrior, but.
Right.
So purchasing the dog, typically, let's just say it's $10,000 to purchase the dog. Obviously, the rescue is free. Then the warrior comes to us. How about all that hand-holding for up to 20 months? We're checking in with you. And then when you leave, once you leave, the first month, we're with you every week. We're calling you. If we have to come see you or whatever we need to do, then it's monthly, okay? And then we're encouraging all of our warrior classes to check with each other. And so occasionally I'll get texts from saying, "Hey, I haven't seen him on social media," or "Hey, his dog passed away," and boom, we're immediately working with that warrior, because that can lead them down the wrong path, right? All of that costs a lot more than $40,000.
For sure. So the K9s are funded all privately, essentially, right?
Yes.
People donating online, however they do it. Dog sponsor.
Yep, but we've been very successful with the Florida legislature, and obviously the governor and the first lady have rescued 2 dogs themselves.
Oh, neat.
And they, the governor
Big
and
proponents.
the legislature have been very generous. And so, the vast majority of our 11, well, not the vast majority, so 220 of our 1,100 are Floridians. Next up is Texas. So we're going to hit our 100th Texan in June, which is a big thing. Ohio is very big for us. Georgia is very big for us. We've got one from every state.
Okay.
I had some people move to Alaska so we could count. I'm just kidding.
You've got Alaska down.
But we do take some state funding, and then hopefully we'll get some federal funding.
Okay, that's great. That's awesome. And I read something very disturbing on your website, which is what you guys are trying to prevent is 20 veterans die a day on average with suicide.
That's the average.
That is just such a horrible statistic.
Yeah, well, and that's what motivates us to do what we do.
Right.
To me, the VA, the federal government hasn't done enough. I mean, when I've studied the Vietnam generation in just total destruction, those folks coming back, look at Charlie on the street corner. What the hell is his problem? Well, Charlie has PTSD, right? And doesn't know any better. We had a gentleman visit us Sunday. It was late in the afternoon. He's looking around, going through the windows. We had an all-female class, so we were jumping to it, and we're like, "Hey, you can't be here." Right. So he came back yesterday, and I was like, "What the hell?" And so we talked to the guy. He's a veteran. His mom died. He's got PTSD. He's got and so we switched from get the hell out of here to how can we help you, because we can tell once we've done a little work with him that he's spiraling, right? And so we'll try to get him into our class, but it's going to take a long time. In the meantime, let's try to point him in the right direction to try to get some services. And it goes on all the time. I mean, when we're walking or dealing with people and they seem weird or obtuse, they most likely are struggling with something like post-traumatic. For the veteran, for the warrior, it's almost always post-traumatic stress disorder, and you can get it from a lot of different things. I think, one of the things with the 8 or 9 warriors that I've really worked closely with and spent the night on the couch and stuff like that, all of them had a bad event in their childhood. And as we get more sophisticated as a society, I want to see if there's a correlation after we get the brain scans, but I want to go even farther back and look to see whether you're more likely to get it, so that we can keep you out of situations that might really emphasize it and really activate it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But that's way down the line, probably past the time of my lifespan. But if we can get the brain scans going, I think that'll be the the nail in the coffin for the VA. They won't be able to argue there's not clinical evidence anymore.
Well, it sounds like you're making a lot of progress, which is fantastic.
Thank you.
Let's switch the gears a little bit. I read about the Pause for Change program. It's something you guys are doing with the prisons.
Yes.
That seemed really interesting. Tell me about that.
We do it in St. John's and Duval, and then a lot of different service dog entities to go into the prisons and work with the guests. And so, it's an incentive for them to be on their best behavior, and it also gives them an opportunity to have a job when they get out. Sheriff Hardwick and Sheriff Waters have been fantastic with us. I'm sure Sheriff Cook would allow us to do it in Clay County as well. We don't do it yet in San Antonio, but it really is.
So are you literally just bringing dogs to hang out, or what are they doing?
They keep the dogs and they train the dogs.
Oh, really? Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And then, we go over, we work with them, how to train the dog, and then we come back to us. They've done what our dog trainers have been doing, and we then finalize and polish, and they can be paired.
It's just, we keep going back to this theme about the healing ability of dogs.
Right.
It's just incredible. We've only scratched the surface,
Correct.
It feels like.
No, you're right. We only have scratched the surface. There's so much we don't know, and that's one of the things that motivates us to come to work every day. There's so much to learn, both on the human side and the dog side. I mean, this is fascinating to me that I've been able to be and have a front row seat for the last year and a half, working to see these dogs as they develop and understand the quirkiness of the dog and the personality of the dog, and then really to watch our trainers be able to motivate the dog to do what we need them to do.
Wow. And really, you contribute all of this to Sherry Duvall, right?
Yep.
I mean, literally started it. I mean, and this is not that old of an organization, relatively new. A couple things I want to hit on before we wrap up. I noticed on your website, dogs are available for adoption.
Yep.
Okay, so that's constantly running with new dogs, right?
Yep. We adopted 150 dogs in 2024.
Okay, and they're already trained,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. No, they're wonderful dogs.
Yes.
The 4 that I've adopted, my wife and I have adopted over the course of time, they were like, oh, well, Mr. Bean, this one's got guarding, or this one's got this, or this one's got that. One was returned. One was the Warrior actually got a job as a bomb detecting service and had his own dog. Stevie likes to be the only one. And and so, the Warrior, and he wasn't working Stevie as a service dog. So they, quote unquote, retired Stevie, and we were fortunate to get her. But those are the dogs that are available. I mean, those dogs are incredible.
Incredible train. That costs a lot of money. Wow, what an opportunity there.
And if you have a problem, we take them back.
Right. Okay.
Try that
even
somewhere
better.
else.
So how do you donate to K9 for Warriors? Obviously, the website is the easiest place.
The best thing people can do for us is the monthly donation. So like most nonprofits, we're heavy November, December. And so for us to be able to smooth it out over the course of the entire year is huge for us. So the monthly sustainer is a $20 thing. I've been doing that for 10 years. It's very simple. Just sign up online.
Been doing it a long time.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah.
No.
But that's where we really push is the monthly sustainers to do that. And you also, we have over 300 volunteers here locally, a strong core of about 50, but you can be a foster parent. I could never do that. Give me a dog, I will keep that dog.
I would think that would be incredibly
but
difficult.
we have people that do that. And then we have all of our meals for our warriors are homemade by volunteers. So if you want to do that, you can do that.
I noticed there's opportunities for paperwork kind of things.
Yep, we have a lot of people that do our thank you.
Do you ever have volunteers, like if I want to just come in and clean the stalls for that's
we have
an opportunity?
That. We have that too.
I might take you up on that.
No,
I like that.
It's very gratifying. The Wounded Warrior Project, every quarter they bring all of their leaders in and they asked if they could come do a service project for us, and we were flattered. And they said, what would you like us to do? And I said, I'd like you to do our 5-year strategic plan. And they said, no, we were thinking like washing cars.
Right. So,
we
don't want anything sophisticated. We'll leave that up to you, the president.
No, people do that. Bank of America, Prudential. I mean, there's Chase, JP Morgan Chase. Yes, there's volunteer as a group. You can come help us with that. You can help us clean the kennels, planning, painting, car washing. I mean, I'm really proud of our campus, the way it looks. Our maintenance folks do a wonderful job. I'm very much of if it's not clean, then people are going to not be as motivated to come to work. And so
Makes sense.
well, everyone's different, right? Some people can work, my desk is clear, but some people are cluttered.
Right.
And so whatever gets it. But to me, the presentation is key. Signs need to be shiny. It needs to, if the hydrant one day got a little rusted and I said something and 2 hours later it was painted,
Wow,
right?
that's
And
awesome.
that's the way it should be.
Yeah, for sure. Well, our veterans deserve it. And Daniel, it was great talking to you. I really appreciate your time. What a great organization.
Thank you.
We're honored to have it on the podcast. And I'm really excited that there seems to be some really exciting progress in the future that's really moving fast. So that's awesome.
No, it's why we get up every day, and we know there are people out there hurting that we haven't gotten to yet. And so getting to them is absolutely critical to us. And so we need to do it better and faster. And that's what motivates us. And then the ability to share that information across all the sectors, not just military, but the first responders and the sexual assault victims. We think really we can have some major breakthroughs.
Interesting. Well,
Yep.
Daniel,
Thank
great
you very
to meet
much,
you.
sir.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. The Hometown Jacks podcast is recorded and produced by First Coast Mortgage Funding, located in the heart of Jacksonville. Do you want to be our next guest? Visit our website at hometownjackspodcast.com. We can't wait to hear your story.